Good morning, friends. Hello, hello. How are you? Hope you're doing grand this morning, this beautiful day. The sun has finally come out a little bit and peeking out. It's still a little cool, but it's going to warm up. All manner of goodness in our days ahead here. We'll take it. Hope you're doing great on this day. Hello, hello. Good morning, everybody. Good morning. Hope everybody's doing okay. On this, the 1st of April. Good morning, Karen. Hope you're doing great. Good morning. Hello, hello. Happy April Fool's Day. We're going to work it, play it straight this year. We'll, we're not going to do a whole lot with that. Hey, Irene, good morning to you. I hope you're doing great. So, all right, friends, let's get going this morning. It is the first day of April. This April Fool's Day here at 11:11, and I'm glad you're with us. I'm glad you're a part of this journey that we might find in ourselves and in this way a little time to enjoy uh, a little digital fellowship, a little time together, just contemplating the good things of the world. So this morning, there is again and again and again in Bible, there is a command that comes from God that says simply this: go. Whether it is at the end of Matthew, where Jesus says, "Go and baptize all the nations," or whether it's all the way at the beginning of the journey, where God speaks to Abraham and says, leave the place of your parents and your father's house and go to the promised land. Whether it is Moses standing before Pharaoh saying, "Let my people go," and then going into the wilderness and onto the promised land. Whether it's Joshua being commanded to go into the promised land and conquer it for the people of Israel. No matter where you end up, this over quite literally thousands of years, God is commanding God's people to go. That a significant part of the spiritual life and the spiritual world is go. And we think about that as like, okay, all right, like should I get a bus ticket? Like what is that? What does that mean? What the understanding is it's not simply this notion of, well, you're in this place and now you're off to another place, but it is this impulse to move forward in the world and bring something into being that wasn't in the world. And this is kind of what we see when Jesus says, "Go forth and baptize all the nations." It is go out there and bring the good news of the gospel of Jesus Christ. Bring the news of what God is doing in the world, has done, is doing, is going to do to the world. And I've been thinking about kind of all of the some of the changes, and I think, and we have, uh, I think, some really wrong ideas about this in some ways, or not wrong ideas, but maybe we just put the emphasis on the wrong syllable, if that makes sense. We emphasize sometimes the wrong things, like go and do this thing, but it's really and that becomes a command to the church, or that becomes a command to all the people of Israel, or that becomes this broad brushing thing. But whether Jesus says it, or whether it is God speaking to Abraham, wherever you find it, separated by thousands of years, it's actually a wildly personal and individual thing. That, you know, God doesn't show up and say, "Hey, some of you people down in Haran, go, go to Haran, would you?" No, he says, Abraham, or Abram at that time before his name changes, go, and that this is a wildly personal thing. Okay, I we can understand that, but I want to kind of try and give some examples of the power of what that means, the power of going in our life, that it is actually story after story after story. We like to think that it is these broad movements of humanity, that of God's exercise of the Spirit, and these that create these grand rivers of transformation in the world. But that's actually not what does it. What does it are individuals. What does it are you and me. What does it are the people who stand in the who see a problem and are called to address that issue. One of my favorite examples of this right now is actually working itself in baseball. Baseball. A few days ago was opening day. The Sox are doing their usual thing. But one of the things that has popped up is what's happening with the Yankees. I don't know if anybody's following this, if you're baseball fans at all, but the whole idea of the torpedo bat. So what they've done is they've changed the shape of the bat, and it's having these incredible results in their hitting. That I think there was one game in which they made that the Yankees had 20 runs, which is just it can change the whole face of baseball in this in this with this new batting structure. And everybody thinks that there was this grand think tank that came together to solve this huge, and all these kind of AI things, and computer modeling and all that sort of stuff. And there was some of that, but largely what the Yankees did, this is what they did. They hired a really smart guy, one guy that was passionate about this and cared about it, and who had real knowledge and was really wanted to work on it. And they paid him for a year to do nothing else but think about the shape of the bat. That's what they did last year. They had one guy that they paid and tasked with looking at the shape of the bat and changing the shape of the bat. And that resulted in this torpedo bat design that is now kind of transforming the face of baseball. Because there's other examples too. Right now they're looking at solving going back to transcontinental flight at supersonic speeds. If anybody remembers the Concorde jet, the Concorde was this incredible invention that would get people across from across the Atlantic in 3 hours. There were all these excuses about why it didn't work, but it actually did work. It was actually kind of bought out to keep from competing. And if you go check the story of Concorde, that it actually worked, and it was actually kind of profitable, but it was kind of bought out in order to stop competing from other transnational flights. There's a guy who came along and said, you know what? Why aren't we doing this? That was 40 years ago that the Concorde flew. We know a few things now. Why aren't we doing this? And and so he came along and he just said, I'm going to solve this problem. And he started to solve these problems. And what he discovered, and this was his assertion. I can't think of his first name. Scholl is his last name, and he said that there's this thing that takes over called bystander effect, which is people see a hard problem and they assume that smart people and big people and somebody had been called to solve that problem, and so it must be really hard and it must be unsolvable. For nearly 100 and whatever years, people have been using a particular size shaped bat and they never kind of considered that perhaps shaping the bat in a different way, and there's been some experience with this. This isn't the first time it's happened. But nobody actually sat down and said, can we solve this problem? Is it a problem to solve? Nobody has actually sat down and gone into the issue to try and solve it. One individual. And the same way with Mr. Scholl, that this idea of supersonic transcontinental flight. He started to work the problem, and as he started to invite other people to his problem, as he started to go, not just stand in the problem and say, oh, well, it looks pretty hard, I guess we can't do that, or like just think about it, but actually go into the problem, engage other people, engage people around him that were really smart in order to solve it. He discovered that there was a lot of belief around it. There was a lot of bystanders, a lot of people looking at it and says, well, that must be really hard to do. So I guess, somebody must have looked at it. When the reality was actually nobody had, or nobody had in a way in 40 plus years. And that what he's discovered is that we actually can do transnational flight or transcontinental flight at supersonic speeds. And it's not as hard as we thought it was. Not that it's not hard. Not that he hasn't had to assemble an incredible team. But when we go into the things that we're called to do, when we go into the places that God calls us, the world transforms because we bring God with us. And I'm not saying these people are particular peoples of faith. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about the power of going into the problem, of finding the place in which you're called to make a mark and simply going into it, not just kind of cogitating or not just saying, oh, somebody should do something, not just raising awareness, but actually committing ourselves to the effort of the transformation of the world. And this is the thing that has, and this is the thing that has always shaped the world. When Uncle Tom's Cabin was written, Harriet Beecher Stowe up in Brunswick, Maine, when she wrote that book, she changed the face of the conversation about slavery in America. She changed it. It's impossible to overstate the effect that book had on the awareness of what slavery really looked like in the United States in the 1850s, and how it began to move public sentiment toward the abolition of slavery. In fact, when Lincoln met Harriet Beecher Stowe, he said to her, this right after the war had started, he said, "Oh, so you're the little lady that started this war." But it was because Harriet Beecher Stowe, the daughter of Lyman Beecher, a great abolitionist preacher, a great congregational family, because it had been laid on their hearts to go into the idea of slavery, to go into it, not to think about it, not to just pray about it, not to just but to go and to actively do a thing, to write a book that would illustrate to the world this is the issue and the problem, to reshape a bat that everybody believed was just the right shape of the bat, but nobody ever encountered, to figure out a new way to fly airplanes that we never actually thought about everybody just thought was impossible to do, but turns out everybody was looking at the problem and saying, oh, that looks really hard. I don't know if we can do that. Somebody really smart must have looked at it. And it turns out that wasn't true. Somebody really passionate must have already told the slavery story, and we must have already agreed that it's okay. Friends, when God says go, it means you don't go alone. It means you gather with you all the saints and all the angels and all the power and all the hosts of heaven to go into the thing that God is calling you to go into. Maybe it's your own heart and your own struggle and your own worry and affliction. Maybe it's something in your family. Maybe it's something in the wider world. But the invitation again and again and again is to go into the places of your life and claim them for God. Go into the places of your life where everybody around is just bystanding and saying, oh, that looks really hard. Somebody really smart must have looked at that and just said it's impossible. And the likelihood is no one actually has. and that they're just waiting for you to do so. Now, I don't know where God's telling you to go in your life these days. I don't know where God is telling you to go and build something new. I don't know where God is telling you to go and reshape what everybody already thought was formed. I don't know where everybody's telling you to go to tell a story that's going to transform the world. But I know God is. I know that He is. I know that He's speaking to you right now with the same way that Jesus spoke to His disciples and said, go to all the nations and baptize them in the name of the Father and Son and Holy Spirit. I know that that same voice, that same impulse, that same desire to make the world more than it already is, to make bigger hitters, to make faster and more safe and more enjoyable trips, to make, well, the world free from humans enslaving other humans. That call, it's that same call and that same energy is placed within all of you. Don't let the bystander effect overwhelm what the power of one person being called into God's kingdom to go and make it more closer to the kingdom of God can do. And don't ever forget that that person is you. Peace and grace to you, my friends. It is. We will pick it up tomorrow with another 11:11.